I'm joined today by Argentina Ortega, who has been a long time moderator and user of Obsidian and just a wonderful person and a great contributor to pretty much everything Obsidian. And she recently gave a talk on Zotero, which we're about to see in a moment, in particular, Zotero, using it, how to get started with it and using it with Obsidian. And first of all, Argentina, thank you for all that you're doing in the Obsidian world and for helping educate and inspire all of us. A couple quick questions before we jump into your training session on Zotero, and that would be, how did you kind of come to the idea that you were going to use Obsidian and then a way to integrate your research, the work that you do with Zotero in that? And then secondly, what are we going to see in this training class that we're about to watch?
Yeah. First question. I started using Zotero not that long ago, actually. I was using another reference manager before. I'm not going to name it, but this reference manager had, I don't know, it kept doing some things automatically, like renaming my papers and then sometimes renaming my PDFs and things like this. So I would lose important information. And when I wanted to find again the reference that I needed to cite for something I was working on, then I would realize that now it was something not even related to my field anymore. It was something completely unrelated. So I started looking around and I found Zotero thanks to a recommendation from a colleague. And it started working out enough for what I was doing back then. Back then, I was still doing notes by hand, so I was not.
So this is before Obsidian that you?
Yeah,
okay.
Before Obsidian, and yeah, that was like it was working okay. I had like the old school version of reading PDF papers.
Yeah.
You printed the stuff, you manually wrote on the margins, maybe on the notebook and things like this. Yeah, I mean, eventually this does not scale because
it does not.
And all the stuff that is there it becomes just like pieces of paper. And when you want to find those notes that you made on the margin, if they are not digitized somehow, then you're not able to use them basically. And then I started looking for a new note-taking app based in part on this issue, and also I was taking pretty extensive notes on a notebook that I had, that I even at some point highlighted because I want to put stuff into Obsidian, but yeah, we'll see when I get to that. And when I found Rome and Obsidian pretty much at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I was trying Rome, there was a pretty cool Zotero Rome extension, which looked pretty useful. But it was very hard-coded, and I wanted to do like something different that suited my workflow a little bit better. And I opened a couple of issues, and I was trying Obsidian also at the same time. So I wanted also something that was compatible with Markdown, which seemed possible at the time on that plugin. But the author said, sorry, this is out of scope. I'm using Rome. I can't really invest time on making this compatible with Markdown. So the nice thing is because Zotero is open source, and I was just basically able to take a look at the existing code. And then I started writing. It was more like a script. It was not really a plugin, because even today I still think the code is still scripty on some places. But the idea was basically to get it working fast, because the whole idea of being able to quickly read, export annotations, and then use them in the place where you were collecting your notes was super, super useful for me. And I think this is the thing that really blew my mind and made me realize that I needed something like what Obsidian was offering. And then after that, I posted this in the Discord server, in case someone finds it useful, and then the requests started coming in. And yeah, the rest is history. Right now, I think I've iterated a bit on the plugin. There are still a few things that can be improved, but yeah, I find it's in a good shape. And in general, the things that I've put into the plugin are mostly things that I use. Here and there, I've added like a couple of things that people have asked for that I don't use, but that, I mean, obviously different people, different workflows, different fields, different workflows too. So I've tried to accommodate as much as I can other ideas, but I use this plugin every week at least, if not every day.
And the cool thing about it too is it's not just for academic research. I mean, you can use it for tracking anything. I like that you start the training session that we're about to see. I like that you started with some of Douglas Adams' books that you wouldn't necessarily think of as something for a research project, but certainly something that many people have read and have consumed and have quoted over the years.
Yeah. I like that. I like to use them basically as the hello world examples of my plugin. So I tried to make, even maybe I will hide at some point some Easter eggs in some of the menus.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So what are we about to see in this training session?
Yeah. So what I tried to do for the talk was try to introduce people to a reference manager, first of all, not specifically Zotero, but reasons why you would want to use a reference manager, both if you're in academia and also if you are not in academia and just want basically a way to manage your sources. So I have a little demo of what the main goal of this reference manager is. And I go a little bit, like I introduce Zotero, what terminology they use, how you would do basic things without any plugins whatsoever. And then on the second part of the session, I install three basic plugins. One of them is mine, so maybe not basic, but two basic plugins, which are, I think, even recommended on Zotero's main page, which are Better BibTeX and Zotfile. And then I plug in mine just so that you can also export stuff to use in Obsidian. And then we go a bit quick, but step by step on how you would configure those, how the output or how the choices that you make influence the output that you get. And do a few examples, not many, because there was a lot to cover.
There was, and it was very in depth, and you all are going to enjoy watching this. It's a terrific session. And so, okay, so what are you working on next? Give us a little insight into either any plugins you're personally working on or any talks that you're excited that people are requesting coming up in the Obsidian community talks.
Well, Mdnotes, I don't have any teaser things yet, because what I showed, so I was showing in the talk the alpha version, so it's not released yet, but it's something I put on Discord in case people wanted to try. And I think it's almost bug free. There are a few things that I want to fix before I make the release. So I would say that the talk already contains like a sneak peek of the plugin itself. Talks, we have actually a bunch of very interesting talks coming up. There is a lot of things going on in the background. So one of the most interesting talks we have right now is by Bree. They have a really awesome post in the forum about knowledge classification and how they use Zotero also in that regard. And it's pretty popular. It's great if you want to know how to organize all the nodes that you have in Obsidian, even outside of Obsidian, like also in your system in Zotero. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be pretty exciting.
And someone who comes from, Bree comes from a library management kind of background. And so not only is it going to be a great talk, but it's going to be very well informed talk.
This is what I find so exciting about the talks and also about the community. I think this is pretty unique. There is so many people from so many different backgrounds, and everybody has like this very tiny area of expertise. And we are all able to learn from each other from these very different worlds and different perspectives, which is, I find it's one of my favorite things about Obsidian. Forget the nodes, the community is incredible in my opinion.
Totally agree. And that's a great place to break. And now we're going to see this wonderful talk that Argentina gave on using Zotero and using it within Obsidian and the plugin that she developed for that. So thank you for sharing your experience and inspiration with us, and we look forward to seeing the talk.
Happy to be here. Enjoy.
Okay, well, hello and welcome everyone to the Obsidian Community Talks. This is on Zotero 101, featuring Argentina Ortega Sainz. I hope I'm saying that fairly well. My name is Nick Milo. I'm part of the Obsidian community as well, and we're just excited to be here and to kind of get going on something that's quite interesting for a lot of us, which is how to take something we find online, particularly a PDF, an academic paper, and put it into a reference manager that then can link to our place where we're dealing with that information, whether it's Obsidian or something else. But how do we use this reference manager, specifically when it's Zotero, which is free and open source? I'm no expert here. I'm an amateur researcher, but we do have some people who I might classify as an expert, and that's our presenter today. Argentina, how are you doing?
Hi, Nick. Thanks. I'm doing very well. I don't know if I would classify myself as an expert. I'm more of an advanced user, I would say. I've spent some time in the settings and on the hidden Zotero places. So I know a bit more than the average user, but I don't know if I'm an expert.
The reason I'm so excited for you to present, though, is because you do have an interesting skill set. You're very active on the Obsidian forums. You're a moderator. You've developed a plugin for Zotero and Obsidian, an integration that works between the two.
Yeah.
And you're giving this talk because you're an active academic. So you kind of have this nice trifecta. And I'm just really excited that I'm able to MC and kind of soak it in, and that you're able to share all this with us. So yeah. Let's get this party going. I'm here to help. Everyone, let's throw questions in the chat. There might be a link to Slido if anyone's interested in Slido, and I'll try to share that in the chat momentarily, and we can use that to kind of compile our questions as we find them.
I will show very soon a slide where you all can interact. So we will set this up so that it's a bit also more interactive, and you guys can also push questions, see questions on the screen, and so forth. All right, then let's get this party started. Let me close the slide first. A moment. I need to close my Zotero and then bring Zotero here. All right, and then let's open this one. Okay. So I'm gonna have the slides up here on the right, because these are not like real slides. They are more sort of like a guide for you guys to know where I am at the moment I'm explaining something. And the idea I have for the talk is to make this very much a walkthrough. The idea is to get you guys set up, or to have you guys basically follow a guide where you can set things up, so you are basically able to use Zotero if you want to use Zotero with Obsidian at the end of the talk. So I went ahead, just for a little bit of context, I went ahead and created an empty profile. I'm not going to go into how to do that because that's a bit more advanced, but the idea is basically this is except for the fourth items you see already here, basically I'm starting with Zotero from scratch. I don't have any settings set up or anything installed yet. So you're basically going to see me do what you would do if you start with Zotero as well. With one tiny difference, that I've done this quite a few times, so I already have some knowledge and I know where to look for things, which is, I think, maybe one of the challenges when trying to set things up. Okay, so then let's get started. The first thing that we need to ask ourselves is, why do you actually want to use Zotero, or any reference manager for that matter. And here is where we start with the interactive part. So I'm briefly going to make this full screen so that you guys can set this up. So once you join here, I'm going to set up now one of the polls. And you should be able to vote on one of the questions that I have set up here, just so that we get an idea here of what you guys know in terms of, for example, Zotero or other reference managers. I'm gonna, do you know, Nick, how many people are we currently, so that we basically count the total number of?
Sure. Yeah, we're maxed out at 100.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. All right. Then we wait maybe until, I don't know, at least 90 of you have voted or 70 of you have voted.
Yeah, it took me 5 minutes to log in. It kept telling me 100 was maxed out.
Okay. Very good. All right. So I see at least so far, maybe about a quarter of the audience already has used Zotero, which is good. The other maybe quarter of the audience at least has a need for a reference manager. Good. Okay, we seem to be stuck at 65. Maybe we wait until we hit 70, then we'll get more or less a rough idea of how people are familiar with reference managers. All right, we seem stuck at 68. I don't want to spend too much time here. I just was a bit curious about sort of the background of you guys.
And just to, sorry to step on you one more time, but for everyone, if you didn't get that at the start, go to slido.com and then it'll ask you to, I know I have some feedback, apologies for that. It'll ask you to put in that hashtag code. So hopefully we can get this. 75 is pretty good though, 75%. So.
I mean, we're already pretty much at 80. So I think we might not need the whole 800 people to vote. I think the idea is already pretty clear. So I'm just going to close this one because I have another one that I would like to ask. I'm going to close this one. Now, how comes the next one? So, sorry, for some reason, there you go. So if we want to actually find out why would you use a reference manager? So I already know some of you are already familiar with. But there were a few at the bottom that were either just curious about reference managers or just wanted to annotate PDFs, right? So, and I think that's definitely a valid use case of Zotero. But my goal with this talk is to actually convince you that you do need a reference manager, not only for the PDF annotation capabilities, but because there are certain things that citations allow you to do. Right, so I guess we're gonna do pretty much the same thing. So we're gonna wait maybe till we hit 80, and then we can move on to me giving you a pitch about why you do actually need this. Yeah, we're pretty close. That's pretty good. All right, so I actually sort of assumed that there would be a lot of people who shared notes or content from their notes publicly, especially since a lot of them were already using Zotero for a reference manager. So we had like 50 on the very first slide. All right. I think we hit 80. This is already a pretty good answer. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pause the poll. I think most people in general either want or get ideas from stuff we consume, or want to share the original notes. So these three main things are, I think, pretty important, and you won't need much convincing, in my opinion, as to why you need the reference manager. All right, so then we can go to my reasons. So basically, all the questions that I just asked you in this survey can be summarized, I think, in these two questions. The first one is, I think, more the academic use case. So if you are an academic and have to publish, or if you are a content creator, a writer, things like this, then you usually need to acknowledge where you got your some of the content from, right? So our notes never live in isolation. We get ideas from things we consume, and therefore, when we make this knowledge public or these notes public, we usually have to give the proper attribution to the sources that we used. And in academia, obviously, this is tied together with plagiarism and ethics and all these sort of things. But let's assume for a very tiny bit that you don't publish your notes. Your notes are only for yourself. Then why would you use a reference manager in this case? I think the last point applies to both people that share and both people that just use the notes for themselves. And this is because we need to know where ideas came from, and we need to be able to trace back how the idea evolved over time, right? So we get some content from an external source, and by citing that external source and maybe even getting the exact quotation, then we can let's say find a mistake or a misunderstanding later on, and it's possible for us then to know what is mine, what is the difference with the thing that I created, and what is originally from someone else. That's one thing. And the other thing is, let's say that you find something that in your notes that is incorrect or potentially false. This could come because you misunderstood. The original author wrote this in a way that you interpreted incorrectly. And by keeping track of where you got the idea and having your notes, then you are able to say, it's my fault. But it is also possible that in the original source that you consumed, there was a mistake, or the author also made a false claim. And you will only know this if you've cited where you got the idea from. So either you propagated, for example, something that was wrong, or you can now basically argue against whatever is it that you read that you don't agree with. Okay, so assuming now that you do want to have a reference manager because you are interested in keeping track of what is yours, what is from someone else, why does these things even exist? So what do they do that it helps us with? So the main thing is the unique IDs, I would say. That's one of the main reasons why you want some tool that helps you manage all this type of knowledge. And you usually get this in reference managers from the database capabilities. Basically, each entry has one sort of unique ID in the database. The other thing is searching and indexing. You basically want to be able to quickly find the source that you are talking about or that you reference in your notes. And this is usually obviously linked to this unique ID. But sometimes you don't memorize the specific ID or the site key that you use. You remember something about the thing that you read, and you want to be able to search this quickly. So the database should be able to help you find things maybe by the author, by the year, by the content of the article that you read, etc. And the last one is the automation of, a bit of help for formatting citations. And this is important, especially if you are in an academic field, because you are definitely required to follow some style. And it's also true for other fields where you actually have to follow certain guidelines when you publish your code, not your codes, your texts. The other, so I mean, right now maybe you are wondering, do I actually need this? If I could, for example, just keep this in my Markdown notes. Yeah, maybe it's possible to do some management, and you can manage to do some unique IDs, and you can search your notes as well. I mean, Obsidian is pretty good for that. However, you have one other thing, and I think this is a long-term thing that maybe we are not aware immediately at the beginning. And once the number of servers that we consume starts to grow and grow and grow and grow, and it scales pretty big over time, especially, then maybe it's a bit hard to do this manually, especially these unique IDs. So you have to start to invest some time on how to name things without some tool that supports you and maybe does some of this automatically already. Okay, so now I'm gonna show a little bit of, so because my goal is to convince you that you need this, I'm gonna show you what you actually can do with it right out of the box. And this is the reason why I added already these first examples. So let's assume now I already have like a small demo vault here that I'm writing something about Earth. When I add something to Zotero, Zotero already gives me the option to copy the citation and the bibliography. So these are the two different things. Let's say, so I haven't added the first book, but let's say now I am I'm gonna cite this, the life, the universe, and everything, right? So I'm gonna type some text here. No, instead of the meaning, it's more about this 42. And then when I paste, oh, sorry, let's see, what did I do? Ah, here comes one commit. Maybe just for the purposes of this demo, I should already choose a different style. So I'm gonna just choose something randomly. I'm gonna go for maybe Chicago, okay? Okay, so I'm gonna do this again. I'm gonna copy the citation because this is the thing that okay, maybe this was the default one, which I don't like. I'm gonna go then for a slightly different one, which is the one I know. So I'm going with IEEE. Again, we start from scratch. Then I copy the citation. Something is wrong. This is funny. Okay. Should be copying something else. Let's see if I copy the bibliography then. Yeah, okay, maybe it's, no, I know what is maybe happening. Yeah, okay. I guess it's the pasting stuff. So I'm gonna do again. Maybe it will work this time. Yeah, not exactly sure. Maybe it's the style. I don't know what is going on. This did not happen before. Did I not choose this correctly? Type review. Okay, let's try again. Copy citation. No. Okay, I'm gonna give up. It's okay, it doesn't matter. We will fix this later. The point is, I'm gonna do this manually now. In theory, you should have gotten a 1 because I am using IEEE. And then here you would get 1 that says, this is my reference, right? And then I actually might start editing things differently, and now I will write something because I really think vowels are important. And then I will just cite one of them randomly, and I will, no, I think maybe it's because they are all, I don't know. Doesn't matter. Let's try again. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Yeah, it does not. It doesn't matter. let's assume now this is a 2 for purposes of the demo. And then when I do this and I come here and copy the bibliography, then you get this also formatted correctly. Except that usually with the style guides, this should have been a 1 and this should have been a 2. So now you have to come and manually edit this thing, and then you spend also some time now reorganizing things. So that's fine for an out-of-the-box functionality. You save some time because now you don't have to format things manually here. So title is in italics, the order of the fields is correct, etc. But this is still some time that you don't want to invest. So one thing you can do, let's imagine you were using Word. I'm using LibreOffice because I am in Linux, but let's imagine you were using Word. When you install Zotero, it will ask you if you want to install this additional plugin. So now let's try the same thing I was doing before. So I'm just going to copy this text here. And instead of these references, we're just going to go ahead and use, first of all, this one. It's going to ask me again which style I want. I'm going to try and choose this one. Let's hope that it listens. And now it's asking me, basically, this will let me search the citations, right? So don't remember which one I was citing. It doesn't matter. Let's go with thanks for the fish. So it suggests a few things. I can choose it, hit press enter, and it enters. This is how it should have looked like when I was copying in the vault, but it didn't. It doesn't matter. Okay, so now I have a 1 in there, right? But I don't have the reference list here. So this is still missing, but I have now the option to add the bibliography. So it's done on its own. And now I can just do references here. And this should be, I don't know, a section. I would, in theory, format that. But now I'm citing the second thing that we wrote, and I'm now citing this in the incorrect order. So now let's go for, what was the other one? Restaurant, something, yeah. So now I added this one, and you see this already numbers things correctly, and it adds it to the bottom of the reference list in the right order. So now I don't have to worry about doing this manually, one by one, changing the order in the correct order that I cited things. This is done on its own by the reference manager. If you are in academia, so let's close this one. If you are in academia, then you usually would do this with LaTeX. Right, not this one. So this is just a small preview of them. Bibliography file, but what we want is the demo file. So here I wrote like a super tiny article, also citing some of the books that we have already here. And wait, let me find the vault again. No, okay. So I already cited them. This is LaTeX. And what's pretty neat also with LaTeX is that if you do this, then you also already get the PDF, and LaTeX already adds the title reference for you. So if you see here, I didn't really write the name of the section. This is done by LaTeX itself. And then I can also, for example, reorder things. So I'm now just shuffling things. Ooh. Okay. So now this is a different order than what we had previously. And if I compile again, did I compile? Yeah, there you go. So now, it did not compile. Probably because I didn't save. All right. Yeah, so now it's in the right order. You can also see another, interesting thing here. You have this question mark, and this question mark indicates that I'm citing something that I don't have in my library. So this also, for example, helps you a little bit when you're writing to say either I haven't really added or formatted my citation, or maybe I made a mistake on the citation that I'm using, which is also something to look out for. So now I think you probably are wondering, well, what does this have to do with Markdown, and why do I care about LaTeX or Word? You can't. I mean, there's different stages of writing, I would say. Some of you keep notes in Markdown, but maybe do the final writing on some other, either text editor or some typesetting language like LaTeX or Word. But say we wanted to use this actually with Markdown. So here is where it gets interesting. I'm not gonna go into how Pandoc does this because this is a talk that Ross is gonna give eventually. But it's the same idea. So you see here, I have already a small Pandoc demo that I already pre-filled for you. I'm also doing the same thing that we had with the LaTeX document, except that I needed to add this section at the bottom. And I'm citing according to Pandoc's formatting thing, and I already generated this so-called bib file that we will talk about a bit later. The idea is basically I can just call, this is a command line utility, and I can call it, and I will get the PDF pretty much the same as I did with the LaTeX stuff. So I will just do enter. It's done. And now I have to actually open it. So let's go with, where did it go? Here you go. Yeah, so here, so just for context and why didn't it show up with the little one thing, because I'm using a different style. So here I'm using APA instead of IEEE, which was the one I was using in LaTeX, right? So this is also something that you can see that is extremely, extremely useful. You don't need to know how to style things properly. The post-processing will be done basically for you, either by Zotero or by LaTeX or by Pandoc. And if I wanted to change my mind, or I have to submit this somewhere else where they require a different citation style, then the only thing that I need to do is change one tiny variable, either in LaTeX or in the Pandoc arguments, and then I get the citations formatted appropriately. I don't have to do this manually each time for each reference that I use. Okay. So I think that's pretty much gives you an idea of what the end result can look like in terms of final product, right? Now I'm actually using the citations, formatting them, and putting them in some document. But before that, there are a few steps that we have to do, and those usually involve taking notes and using Obsidian. So this is what we are now gonna talk about. So first, all these things I've showed you right now, you can actually do with any reference manager. You don't need Zotero for this. I don't know if all, but I will say probably most of them allow you to do all the things that I've just showed in different ways, probably different menus, things like this. So then why would you choose Zotero among all the possible options? So I think not a lot of people care about open source or not. And it might not be the deciding factor for all of you, but I don't think there is any other reference manager where you can write your plugins for. So this is why, in this case, the open source of Zotero matters. If there were other closed source reference managers where you could actually do some plugin writing, then maybe this would also help. And this is also something that we see with the Obsidian community, the fact that we have access to multiple community developed plugins and also provide some capabilities that you wouldn't have out of the box unless you write many, many support emails and then complain consistently until you actually convince someone to give you what you need or what you want. The other important thing is, or the other useful thing that you have also with Zotero is you already have some OCR included. So when you search for stuff, it actually also searches the contents of your PDF. Okay, so I think for now we are basically done with why Zotero, why reference managers. We maybe take this one question that we have so far, but if you do have some, you can anytime type in the Slido Q&A, and then the questions will show up here. Yeah, so we can choose this, what is IEEE? IEEE is, yeah, a citation style. The citation styles are defined in something called a CSL file, which I guess it stands for Citation Style Language. I'm not sure, I might be making things up. Which style to use actually depends in the end of the place where you are submitting the document you are working on. IEEE, I use IEEE because I submit stuff to IEEE. But in the end, if you submit to your, I don't know, teachers, or if you submit to a specific conference, then they will tell you which citation style to use. Then, so I've answered this one. I will keep these two other questions for the end of the talk. I can answer this one. So how much command line does my workflow need with Obsidian? 0. All the things that I'm going to show are actually just with Zotero, and they usually have, to a degree, some GUIs that you can use. What I showed with Pandoc, don't get scared. This is just basically to show you the possibilities, which, by the way, just maybe a small teaser, there is someone who is developing a Pandoc plugin in the Obsidian Discord. It's in beta right now, and they are aware that people like us need citations there. So this is something that is on the roadmap and probably will eventually get added as well. Okay, so then this one is done. What might be a better reference style for humanities? Sorry, this is out of my depth. I do not know. I've heard of both reference styles, but I don't know. I would ask the place where you're submitting stuff, which one is the suitable one for you. It might depend on the conference, for example. And yeah, it also depends on schools and institutions. Yeah, okay, I think we can move on. I'll answer this too at the very end of the talk, okay? All right, so now we need to establish a bit of lingo. So we want to know what is going on in this screen. And one important thing, at least for me, but potentially for you, since you're using also Obsidian, is where the hell is my data? Okay, so we basically can start. I'm going to start in this order. I'm going to start first with these collections and tags. So first, lingo of Zotero is this thing that I've selected here is an item. This item, usually when you add things, then has some child elements or documents, which, for example, we'll see it can include your PDF. Over here, you have fields. So the author or the authors is a field, a title, abstract, etc. And the item type, you can actually choose quite a few different ones, and they all have different fields according to the information that needs to be recorded. Over here on the left side, you have something called, well, you have your library, but these folders, I'm gonna use quotations here as well, are called collections. And these collections, let's do maybe an example. Oh, sorry. H2E2, oh, again. And then let's do maybe a new collection, books. And I don't know, let's do one under books that is called sci-fi. Right? So right now, these three are empty. But I can add, for example, let's start with this one, and I just drag and drop to sci-fi. And one neat thing from Zotero is that if you press Alt on your keyboard, it shows you to which collections it belongs, right? So, for example, if you've seen Bree's video, then there is also a lot of benefits because then you can organize things differently. So let's say now I am doing, I have a folder for projects, and I have a folder for or a subfolder for demo. And now I can add all of this to the demo folder. And when I alt on this one actually belongs to multiple folders or multiple collections, to be more precise, which is good because then you don't have to worry about where does this belong. But it can also get unwieldy, right? Similar to tags, you also have that problem about creating multiple folders and where should this be stored, and now I have to be manually dragging these things. So I am not a super expert on this. You definitely can hear BibTeX, and then you already have a good system to start with. The other important things are these nodes. So right now you see we have 0 nodes. So maybe we can add, right click, and then add node. And then I can just type some stuff. So just so you know, maybe you can even add some, let's add some markdown style things, but they are not going to be markdown. This is not markdown. All right, so just so you know, the nodes in Zotero, at least right now, this version in particular, are actually HTML. So their editor is sort of what you see, what you get style. But obviously, there are going to be some limitations about what you can translate in the future to Markdown. You can abuse it a little bit by writing Markdown style stuff. And you can even do, we already had a node in the vault called Earth. So you could even write already some Obsidian style links in your nodes, and this would also help. Yeah, then the other thing is when you import items from some places, then you usually get some metadata that comes from the publisher or the site where you got these things. So for articles, it might be, or academic articles, it might be the keywords. Some places add tags in this sort of weird way. My advice would be, in general, to ditch those automatic keywords and then add your own so that they match what you use in Obsidian in the end. If you've seen Brian's talk also, then you see that you can use tags, for example, to track status. So maybe we mark this one to read. And then here, when you see this one, then I can actually filter pretty easily the items that I have. So I can just click on some, and then you get basically a fast way to filter things, right? And you can click on multiple tags as well. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers the sort of lingo. I think we do this one first, and then we check out where the data is stored. Yeah, so first question you are going to have probably is, now I want to use Zotero, but how do I add stuff? So I'm just gonna, I already prepared some stuff that we can add. And one way to do it, because there are multiple ways to do it, is to use the Zotero Clipper, I think it's what it's called. And basically, whether you get the PDF automatically depends on whether you have access to it. For example, sometimes you have to set up proxy or something like this for your library, and your library then opens access to some databases and some catalogs. But then you also have, for example, places like Archive that already provide access, open access to any sort of paper. So if we do this one, then, for example, it will ask me where to save it. In this case, this would go to the root of my library, but I could also use, okay, I was too slow. I could also use, for example, yeah, I have no idea where it sent it. you could also use some other collection, but let's try to, yeah, let's do it like this. Saving. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so now in theory, I should, yeah, I have no idea what's going on with the demo. For some reason, it's not saving it. I think it might be confused with which library. That's very interesting. Let's maybe refresh the page. There you go. I think it might have been stuck with my Zotero because I was using it before the talk for my own stuff. So probably it was trying to connect to the previous database, and maybe that was messing things up from there. There you go. So if you see here, then I already even got the PDF automatically. So that makes it already pretty easy, right? So you just need basically to click on one thing. Yeah, so we can close this one now. The other way to do it, for example, would be some places already, for example, get recognized as books. So this is just basically an example so that we complete the collection from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And when I click on this thing, then you also see like the small, progress thingy, and then you basically get now the item back in your library. Yeah, we can close this one. So now here comes the bots, right? So not everything, and the key thing to remember here is that Zotero is a reference manager, so it's interested in getting the right metadata so that it can cite things appropriately. But not everything is designed in such a way that it's easy to extract the metadata, and you have a list of things that are maybe, of sites that are easy to parse because Zotero has already provided some way to do it. So in this case, for example, when I try to add this episode of Cortex to my vault, okay, again, something not right. I think I know what the problem is. I'm going to have to reload all of them because all of them were open when my previous library was open. So probably it's trying to add them to the wrong library. Yeah, there you go. So it's trying to add this snapshot. And when it's done, yeah, then now I have snapshot here. So if I click on it, then you can see that it basically opens, it saves a copy of the website that I just added, and it stores it somewhere with some weird file path, right? Okay, so we can close this one as well. Now, let's say that you want to participate in Ryan's and Bree's book club, and you need to add your reference here. The other option would be, I will copy the ISBN number. And Zotero has this tiny sort of magic wand thing where you can add basically some unique identifiers. Unique identifiers usually are these ISBN numbers, DOIs for papers, unique IDs that are used to identify pieces of published works, right? So this one basically lets me add the book. It already knows it's a book. It gets already the appropriate metadata from basically a central database that lives somewhere on the internet. Yeah, then let's close this one. So now I'm going to give a slightly different example. And let's say, so similar to our previous example, I don't have the PDF yet, right? So I actually got this PDF from my university catalog. So I could not get basically the automatic click and play thing on Zotero. So what I'm going to do here is instead show something slightly different. So you get the PDF from somewhere, and you can drag and drop directly into Zotero. The problem in quotations is that sometimes, usually, let's put it the other way around. Usually, Zotero would be able to extract metadata from the PDF if the PDF has it. So in this case, you can see that when I drag my PDF, it stayed a PDF. It doesn't really give me all the tabs that I should be seeing here about the metadata and the fields that I need to be able to cite this. So I have two options. One of them is with Zotfile, so I'm not going to do that one right now. But what we're going to do here is I have the DOI, which I will copy. And then we're going to do basically the same process as we did before. Hope this works. Yeah, it did. So now you see the book is actually here. And now I basically can just drag and drop the PDF. And now the PDF is attached to the item that I actually used. With Zotfile, there is another trick that we can do. Maybe I can show it later. So I'm not closing this one. Another option to do this, which is maybe not the most convenient one, is to add the item manually. So you can do, for example, in this case, you would be citing a picture. Somewhere in here, there's something like an image or a photo, or it's definitely possible to cite a picture. Now I cannot see it. Presentation. Maybe it was artwork. I mean, yeah, might be because of the thing. So here, basically, you would have to fill out things by hand, right? So I don't remember what I was citing here when I was looking at this example. But let's just say I'm copying this for the author or the artist, and then I'm pasting. Then the title. I have no idea what the title is. More. Yeah, I'm gonna make up a title here based on a line. So yeah, let's see. Let's say it's like this, and then I would basically just continue filling all the fields by hand, so the citation formatting is done automatically. And you, of course, could, for example, download the picture and then attach this, just like we did with the PDF if you wanted. Funny stuff, you can also cite software. So if I do this one, let's see if it worked. No, I also have to refresh. Fine. Yeah, so if I do this one, yeah, okay, it actually worked and I just didn't see it. So now I have here, for example, the software, the date when I visited, or when it was last released, maybe, I don't know, because it's confused maybe about the time zone. The URL, and if I click on this one, it actually also opens directly the URL of the source, which is also nice, for example, for news articles and things like this. Yeah, and so forth. So you can also do this, for example, for news articles, blogs, etc. And sometimes it will be successful at getting authors, some abstract, and some metadata out of them. And when this doesn't work, then you probably have to fill in manually the missing fields. Okay, so I think we can close this one as well. I didn't add a Q&A here. Maybe I should have, but I'm just gonna go very quickly here. Because right now I've just shown you, wait, we're missing one important thing, sorry. Where is the data? Because the data, where the data is stored is actually pretty important. So you have to keep in mind that Zotero is using a database. So your data is hidden somewhere inside your computer, but it's hidden somewhere. So you have one option that comes with Zotero. Zotero gives you like 300 megabytes for syncing stuff if you have an account. But if you start to add PDFs, that's gonna get full pretty quickly. So you usually only want to, I'm not gonna log in, so I'm not gonna show this part of the setup, but you can do it, and you can set it up so that it only syncs the metadata and the PDFs then stay locally. And we will see with Zotfile how to set things up so that you don't run out of space. Yeah, what you want though is to find out where your data is. And when you create or when you sync something to Zotero, then it stores this in this so-called data directory. So you can click actually on this one, and it opens the directory that you're using, right? And then here you have some storage, and then you have these weird folders where we, for example, just added this knowledge graph. But based on the name of the folder, I would never be able to find the file that I want to use. And if I want to back this up, and sometimes, I don't know, so at some point Zotero dies or something, then finding the stuff that I actually want to have access to is just going to be a pain. So one thing, so Zotfile helps us actually in dealing with this later on. And you can also split out of the box. Yeah, I should have thought about this maybe. Okay, so I'm just gonna use this here, Zotero data. I don't know if it was data. I'm not gonna do it because we would have to restart and do some other stuff. But you can basically choose a separate spot to store the data so that it doesn't live in this default directory, and this will also help a little bit with managing the space and with having less weird file names. Okay. I hope I don't need this. We might have to revisit if I don't need it for Zotfile because I don't remember. Okay, so just then quickly, why do you need then plugins, or why don't we just use Zotero stock? Basically because of the things I just mentioned right now. So saving stuff in the right spots. The unique IDs, then it's hard right now to see or to differentiate, for example, directly already from the Hitchhiker books. All of them are by Adams, but I might not be able to uniquely reference them unless I use exclusively citations. And then I don't have a visually, I don't visually have a unique ID that I can refer to. And obviously then you also want to export to Markdown, right? So I just left the resources here. And here comes actually one big shout out to Kat, because Kat wrote a pretty detailed write-up of how to do this, basically what I'm going to show now. So if you also want a written version, you can visit the forum. Kat's write-up is pretty great and pretty comprehensive, and it has a bunch of screenshots. So what I'm basically going to try to do with the rest of the talk is yeah, to provide like examples for what Kat is doing here, and maybe show some variations that so that Kat doesn't have to pretty much document all the possible combinations. So we can play a little bit around with different options and see how that looks, and maybe try different formattings. Okay, then we can maybe do, I should have added also a Q&A here, but I didn't. All right, what we can do right now is, if you do want to follow along and you downloaded the plugins, we can install them right now. So this is what I'm going to do right now. I'm just gonna use, okay, so these are the 3 plugins that we want to install, except the idle slide. And what we have to do, I'm sorry, because this one now got cut off, so I'm going to move briefly here. So what we have to do is just go to Tools, Add-ons, and these 3 files that I already selected, called XPI, you basically drag and drop to the window that will show up. So this is what I'm going to show you. You are not going to see the instructions for a tiny bit right now because it makes it weird. But then basically this thing pops up. I drag and drop, and I remember now when I was trying this out last time. Now it worked. Last time it didn't want me to do 3 at a time. So right now we have 2. I'm missing Zotfile. Yeah, okay. All right, so now we have this, the three of them here. I can close this now, I think. I hope. Maybe I didn't, I shouldn't have closed it. It doesn't matter. Yeah, so now I can restart Zotero, so the plugins take effect. It's pretty neat. So now we have BibTeX is initializing. Zotfile likes to do this. So it opens the changelog so that you know what was the last thing. And now we can start to set things up. Right, I think maybe we should have paused a little bit. What do you think, Nick? Should we take some questions?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take some questions.
All right. So I have one here. Zotero can find PDFs from us. Where does it get them from? And is there a limit on which PDFs it can find for you? It gets them from the website that you give it. So for example, let's go here to knowledge graphs. And this one, you have basically the URL. And this URL, I already have, I think, one of them here. Basically, people have written a certain parser for the web page. So you have the web page, and then people have manually written how to find stuff within that page, how to identify the authors in the whole text with maybe certain regex patterns or something like this. And it also maybe identifies where the PDF is located. I'm not exactly sure how it does it in the background. It works, in my case, for example, it works for some websites, but when I try to download things with, for example, IEEE, which requires an institutional sign-in, it doesn't work, even though I do have access to the PDF and it's seeing it in the browser. So it depends. It's not always successful. Yeah, so we answered this one. Can you put your Zotero database in Dropbox? You could. I don't know if it's recommendable. I think you should be fine as long as you close Zotero when you don't use your laptop. And if you are planning on putting the Zotero database in Dropbox so that you can use it on multiple laptops, then don't use it simultaneously. But I wouldn't put it in Dropbox. I think the setup that you can do with Zotfile and with the Zotero account is sufficient so that you can sync the relevant stuff. So if you remember when we saw the preferences here, the sync tab has this username. So if you create an account in Zotero, this will let you basically sync the, let's look at, for example, knowledge graph. So it will sync the metadata contained in this top level item, but you can set it up so that it doesn't sync the PDF. And then with Zotfile, a little bit later on, then we can dig in the settings so that the PDFs, for example, are organized in a certain way, and then those you can sync with Dropbox. You basically split the two things so that you don't rely also on Zotfile to store all your PDFs as well, because that, so you can expand the space that you get from them, but it costs no. It's basically up to you if you want to go for that. Yeah, so if you change your data directory, will everything move to the new one automatically? No, that was the trick that we saw with the message when I was trying to do the moving. You have to close Zotero, then you basically move the contents of that folder to the other folder. I can do a demo at the end if we want, and if we don't need it for Zotfile, because I honestly don't remember if this was requirement. Okay. What are my opinions for using Zotero as a personal library for everything, not only books and papers, but also podcasts, blogs, etc.? My personal opinion is that it's not great. So I think I personally use Zotero only for PDFs, books, and things where you can get the metadata automatically, because otherwise inputting the metadata by hand is a bit time consuming. But it depends on what you want to, like with everything, it depends what you want to do with this, or why you want this type of contents in Zotero. If you plan to cite them because you want to reference them and you want to credit them for something that you're working on, then definitely they should belong in Zotero. But I don't. So I basically, the content where I need to cite things is based on academic stuff. So I only add papers or books that I need to cite. Does that browser plugin work for YouTube videos and IMDb pages? It does work for IMDb pages. I don't know if it works for YouTube videos, and I don't know if I have, if I can set an example. But I would try it. I would guess yes. One way we can find out already is if we look at this list of so-called translators. These translators are just the terms that Zotero uses for scraping. So if I try to find YouTube, yeah, so there is already a YouTube translator. Most likely it's able to get at least some metadata from it. So yeah, you could most likely do that. IMDb definitely works. This one I've tried in the past for testing. Yeah, I would like more information on how to set the Zotero proxy to it. I don't think you can set up the Zotero proxy directly here, but I also haven't tried before. So the way I do it, at least for my university, I set up the proxy in Firefox. And Firefox basically lets you configure this directly with some automation. Most likely the library, if the library has some remote access service set up, then it has instructions on how to set it up for the browsers and or for reference managers. So I would ask there basically. I have Zotero. Yeah, this is different. Sometimes when I use the citation plugin Word, it usually adds the first and last name of the author using APA. I just want to display the last name. Not sure I understand this question. Maybe try asking it again, and maybe I answered this one when it comes to BibTeX. When annotations are converted to Markdown, is it okay to rename the MD file before moving it to Obsidian? Yeah, we get to this one later on. Okay, I think, how do you add new fields? I manually add data for podcasts. I need to type the date it aired, and I don't have that field. So I would suggest probably you have podcast, and yeah, you don't have date. This is weird. So Zotero is somewhat strict about the types of items that it adds. It's not easy to convince them to add new types of data here. And what they do is, for example, in the case of podcasts, they have some documentation about how to use the extra field. So you would usually add here manually date aired or something like this, depending. They probably have some instructions on their website about this. But if you add, let's say, some extra fields here and the citation style recognizes them as appropriate, then when you cite, it will get information from this extra box. New fields, yes. Okay, I think the next ones are more about Mdnotes process and yeah, do you need plugins for Obsidian or are the plugins just for Zotero? So depends on how you're viewing the question. I would say the plugins I'm gonna show, so I'm gonna give you reasons why you need them, and maybe this is the key to move on. So we start basically with Zotfile, and I'm now tell you, you don't need the three of them. If you want to use the one I developed, which is the one I use for Obsidian specifically, you probably need both. I haven't tested without Zotfile and BibTeX. So if you don't want to install them but want the Obsidian workflow, you might need to open an issue for me because I don't know if it works without them. Okay, so then Zotfile, why do you want this? What we mentioned before, you want to manage your attachments. You don't want them stored in some hidden directory from Zotero. So you here in Tools, you can go to Zotfile Preferences, and then it gives you actually a bunch of options. The other reason is the PDF annotation. So the PDF annotation is actually done thanks to Zotfile. Zotfile is the one that helps us extract highlights and annotations from PDFs. And that's the thing that Mdnotes uses actually to export things to Markdown and move them to Obsidian. So we can start here. So first of all, managing attachments. Zotfile has a few things that help you follow like a systematic naming convention that would help you identify where your files are stored. So it has something called wildcards, and these wildcards are things you can use to name your files. We can start first to do this. So it has two fields. The first one over here is the one that is useful when you want to attach stuff here. So I have for my purpose, I have a reading list where I download all the PDFs that I want to add back to Zotero. So you select a directory in your computer where you plan to download all the PDFs that you want to add to Zotero eventually. And the other setting is this one. So here you have two options, and I guess the question here is, where do you want them? Some people want to store the PDFs directly on their Vault, so you could choose your Vault and then add a folder here, and then Zotfile would help you move the PDFs to your Vault so that you basically store everything together. I personally don't do that, at least not yet. So you could add this maybe PDF library, let's call it. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. So let's create this one. And let's open this. And now you have the option here to use some of these wildcards also to create subfolders if you want. I'm not going to go through the whole possibilities. The number of possibilities is too big. I actually don't remember what this W stands for. I think it might be the name of all the authors, but I'm not sure. But basically, this would mean that you add a folder for the name and then a subfolder for the year. So you basically have an author's publications in a single folder and then subfolders for the years where he has published multiple things. Personally, the one I use is author. For me, this is enough. And you will see why, because also when I go to the renaming rules, and I'm going to do something very briefly here. So let's choose the Hitchhiker's Guide. And now here I'm going to click on update. So this is the way the PDFs, for example, would be. Actually, let's do something different. Let's choose the one from Knowledge Graphs, because this one has a PDF and we can see how the renaming is affected. Yeah, so you basically can set up using also these wildcards in which way you want the PDF to be named. So right now I'm gonna leave it like this, which is author. So you're gonna get the first name. I am not a fan of underscores, so I just do dashes instead. And when I update this one, then you get, yeah, basically underscore, so that all your maybe title is all together. So now the other thing you can do is how to change how many, how the limiters between authors happen. And I don't want blanks on mine, for example. So let's say, let's do it like this. And here I can choose how many authors I want in the name of the file. I usually just use the first author. And then, yeah, this one won't matter for me because I don't have, I'm only using one, but if you have more, yeah, then you would get this, right? I'm gonna leave it actually like this because now I have the first author's last name, the year, and the short title of the file, let's say. Right. So now we still have this thing here. So now how do I do the renaming? You right click on this and you have, so these two menus are from Zotfile. You want to rename the attachment, so you do this, and basically now, now you see that the PDF is renamed the way we specified it. And when I click on show file, it is actually now on the path that we specified. So for example, if you selected a path that is in your Dropbox directory, then you would be effectively moving all the PDFs directly to Dropbox so that they are synced. So it's worth noting, I don't know if you can see this, but there is like a tiny link symbol in the PDF, and this means that the PDF is no longer stored in Zotero, but it's linked and it lives somewhere outside of the Zotero data directory. And yeah, so it's basically an external attachment, let's say. So this is not going to be synced if you have a Zotero account. Yeah, so this is basically renaming rules. We're going to revisit it a little bit later once we have set up BibTeX. Extracting PDF annotations. So that's the other thing you can do. I think you have already seen this in Bree's video, but we can do a small example here. So in this small example, let's just highlight something. So I can highlight this one and I can make a comment. So knowledge graphs are cool. So I'm already doing something sort of Obsidian related, and I'm already adding links to my annotations here. And we will see how to get them later on into Obsidian. You can also use, for example, other colors, just so that we have something later on for our example. And I'm just also going to highlight stuff randomly here. And the other thing you can do is add basically a note here that says definition or something like this. Let's do it tag style just in case. Definition, right? Okay. Actually, maybe let's add something but on a different page just so that we have a slightly different example. This one here, and maybe let's put here example. Something like this. And the other thing that I have for this is you can also, for example, I think the color is not very helpful, so let's change this to something you can see. Maybe green, which was the one we used also above. Okay, so I basically underlined this section, and this is I'm already doing stuff later for Mdnotes, but we revisit this one when we get there. All right, so now I've read my paper or my book or whatever I have here, and I want to actually get those annotations out of Zotero. So Zotfile lets us do that by clicking here on extract annotations. You see it has like a little progress bar down here. And once it's done, you get basically a note with all the things that we just added here, right? So you see everything underlined, some of the Obsidian style annotating. And importantly, I think you also get a link back to the PDF. So I think if I click on this one, it opens directly to the place where I made the annotation, which I think is pretty cool because it already enables you to quickly jump between the annotation you made and the actual place in the source where you made the annotation. So this is okay. This is already quite helpful, but you can also customize this quite a bit. And this eventually is relevant if you want to use some of the advanced stuff in Obsidian. So although we saw first that Zotfile preferences are listed here, there are actually quite a lot of preferences that are stored in something called the config editor. And this config editor is basically a little gold mine. This is where all the good stuff is. So you'll get this warning, and you have to accept the risk because you are now modifying variables that the plugins and maybe Zotero are using. Okay, so now we are here. And the list is quite long, so I don't recommend scrolling. You have the advantage that you can go here. And here you already see I have some preferences for Zotfile. So now we have a few choices. One of those choices is what to do with the colors, because the colors depends on how you use them when you are annotating too. You might have some color coding for yellow means first pass, blue means questions, things like this. And you might want to use these annotations or these highlights differently. So Zotfile actually has quite a few things that you can customize here. I don't think we can go through all of them. So I'm gonna do just a small set of demos. And I also honestly don't remember which one is which. So when I change mine, I usually just experiment until I get the desired outcome, and then I leave it and I let it be. So we want probably one or two of these. So I'm gonna first just set up one of them true. We are gonna do, I wish the extraction was a little bit faster with this paper. But we're just gonna see what the effect of setting this one to true is. And yeah, so now you see we already have some information about the colors directly on the node. Let me make this a little bit small. Yeah, okay. So that's one way to do it. Now let's set this one to false and this one to true. And when I extract again, you will get multiple nodes. So now this setting, this color node setting, will basically group them by color. So now it split the annotations into the different colors that I use for highlighting. So I got yellow and I got green. I thought I had used also magenta, but maybe I didn't. Did I save? Let's add one more. Let me move this one temporarily here. And add, yeah, we have magenta. I don't know why I didn't take the magenta one, or I just missed it. I don't know. Maybe let's add something. Oh, sorry. More purple that it recognizes. I don't know, something like this one instead. Okay, and we save, we close, we extract again. So this is also one caveat of using Zotfile to extract these things. You will see now in a minute when they are done. It doesn't really delete the old ones. You basically keep all the ones that you have available. Which is, yeah, I don't know, it depends. It probably is meant for a different use case than mine. You maybe do several passes and you want to keep old annotations versus new annotations and then compare. Or on the first pass, you highlight in one color, but on the second, you highlight on a different color. So you want to keep all of them, I don't know. In any case, it seems it doesn't like my purple for some reason. So I'm just gonna let it be. I'm gonna delete, go ahead and delete all of them. Yeah, so I personally use this one that has the colors split. And now we can do a few things. So I think now we can edit how the annotations look. One thing we can do, for example, is remove these quotes that are a bit annoying and maybe add block quote instead. And add block quote. And the other thing that we can do, or that I do at least, is I remove I removed the date from the title because I don't want to be dealing with stale annotations, especially when I export stuff to Mdnotes. So now when I do this, again, extract annotations. Yeah, and again, Kat's write-up has actually also quite a bit of detail about this, so you can also check some of her settings there. And now this is the other thing that gets a bit annoying with Zotfile. If you see here, actually there is more than what we highlighted, but when I click on it and then I click on something else, then the title gets corrected. So this is something that I don't know why it happens, but yeah, it happens. So in case you have problems with your item's title, then this is one of the reasons probably you have to click on the notes. Yeah, you can do, looking at the time, I think I might speed up, so I'm not gonna do more experiments of these ones. Maybe we tackle some specific cases at the end if you have some wishes of what we can try. Yeah, so maybe now we have some time for Q&As right now for Zotfile specifically. I think this one we already answered. Is there a way to extract marker highlights, not text highlights? I don't know, what do you mean by marker highlights? So the two things that get extracted are, oh, my mouse is dying, are these yellow highlights. So this, yeah, I don't know, marker, this would be marker highlights for me. So I don't know what exactly you mean by marker highlights. Do you mean maybe this ones? No. Anyways, the two things that get extracted are this type of highlights, this type of nodes. When you add, there is another type of node that you can add, which is I think I covered this one. Okay, not pillar. This is maybe a bit ugly. This type of highlights won't work, and underlines. These ones also work. So underlines, this type of marker highlights in my terminology, and these so-called pop-up nodes get exported, but inline comments don't. And for example, Foxit has Foxit Reader is another PDF viewer that is relatively popular, and it has many types of highlighting thingies. Those don't get exported, so only this type of highlights and underlines. Yeah. Then,
Argentina, just to clarify, you said the highlights, the underline, and did the note?
Yeah,
just the note. Okay,
are,
that too.
Yeah. So the highlights themselves, when you double click on them, then you also get the same pop-up note that you can get individually without any highlights. So you can basically use all of them. These ones are good to use when you are basically commenting on the thing you highlighted. If you are making notes to yourself, then you can also just use one of these individual notes that are not attached to any particular part of the text here. Okay. Let's see. I think clarification. Some PDF tools have custom markers which overlay on top of the text instead of marking text. Yeah, I don't think so. So this is something that I don't know very well. But PDFs can store information on different ways. So some of them store the information directly on the PDF. Then some other PDF viewers just store the PDF, they leave it alone, and then the annotations and markers get stored somewhere else. Those Zotfile has problems with, so it cannot recognize those types of things. And I think that's probably the case with Foxit on Linux, at least. I think Free has got it working on Windows. So it might, the best thing is just to give it a try and test. Yeah, okay. Yeah, then let's go to the next one, because I think the other ones that have here are more about Obsidian and citing in Obsidian. Maybe there's one here. I use DemonThink, and I use this as my data directory. And what about books on Kindle? How do I connect those? I don't think there is a way to get or to easily get books on Kindle in Zotero, but I also haven't checked, so it might be worth to take a look in the plugins directory of Zotero, so that you see if maybe there is something out there. For DemonThink, since I'm not using Mac, I don't know for sure, but I would say yes. No, well, depends what you mean with the data directory. So remember that over here, when we were looking at files and folders, there was this data directory. This data directory is actually the path that contains the database. So what I would say is, if you want to use both of them, because as far as I know, DemonThink is also renaming and moving files around. You have to decide which of them you want to use for renaming and for moving. If you set not Zotero's directories, not the database, but if you set Zotfiles PDF library, or this location of files, to the path where you store your DemonThink database, so that DemonThink can also index it, that would be, I think, one way to make it work. I would limit moving files somewhere else, because then when you click on this one, maybe I can do an example at the end if we have time. But when you click on a file that is no longer there because you moved it within your file system, then Zotero will ask you to find it. And if you move a lot of files, then you are going to spend a lot of time manually clicking on each of one, because you cannot do it en masse. You have to do it one by one. So moving files outside of Zotero, or especially the PDFs, can be tricky. So all the moving I would do through Zotfile. So change the directory and make Zotfile move them by right-clicking and renaming, because this is, so that's the other thing you could do. You don't have to do one by one here. You could select all of them, then right-click, and then rename. And then it will move all of them and classify them accordingly, right? So it's just a matter of choosing which tool actually sort of owns that directory you're using. Yeah. Okay, I think we can move to the next part, which is better BibTeX. I'm gonna speed up a little bit because we are, it's taking longer than I actually expected. So these reasons we already discussed a little bit. So the unique IDs are what you see here. These are called side keys, and they are called side keys, I guess, based on better BibTeX. BibTeX is just the format of the file. We also saw this file here, bib.bib. And when we saw it here, h2 bib. So when you see the file here, these are basically the unique IDs, right? So these are the side keys, which means you could actually, as I was saying at the beginning, you could actually maintain your library of references by hand. You can build this plain text version of your library. But now you have to think about what is the unique ID for each of the references that I add. And this can really be somewhat of a pain. So better BibTeX helps in this regard, because now you can have some rules about how to make this these side keys. So I'm going to go over here, preferences, and then better BibTeX has its preferences on a different spot than the other plugins. And what you want is, here, what you want is to move or change this one according to something that is meaningful to you. So I use actually my my side keys as naming convention, and then this basically helps me find files pretty easily in my file system also. So this is the default one, and if you see here, the side keys are pretty long, which I personally don't like. So what I do is instead I use this one. So for me, it's author. I remove the title. Sorry, yeah, title year, and then I do journal. This is not my real thing, but this is the one. Wait, without the B, right? So because I use LaTeX, I do a bit of post-processing, but in general, this is how my psyche looks. And once we do this, because these psyches were already generated, we need to right-click and then refresh the BibTeX key. And then they get basically sorted. So for me, they are a lot smaller. But for example, in this case, yeah, you have an abbreviation that maybe is not super accurate. So what I do usually is whenever I add something to Zotero, the first thing I do is go here, BibTeX, and then pin it. And once you pin it, this cannot be overridden by anything else. So let's say I would somehow add another Hitchhiker Guides the Galaxy book that also got added in 2007. Then the next book would be basically Adams 2007A, so that it has a unique identifier. It automatically on its own adds certain things so that you don't have to worry about making them unique. There's many ways to construct this side key, but yeah, I think we might be running out of time. So one thing I can do pretty quickly is so show how I use this slightly fast. So these are notes from my actual Vault. And you can see that I also use this as part of my naming convention for figures when I make annotations, and I take a screenshot, paste it in Obsidian, rename the screenshot so that it also uses the side key. And this means that whenever I want to find something about a particular paper, I just need to search my file system for the side key, and then I get a bunch of results with the files. So it doesn't even have to be Obsidian specific. It can be anything. Okay, so I can close this one. The other thing that you potentially want to use, and I think this is related to some of the questions that you get here, is you want to use this with some other tool. And these tools usually use files like this bib file that I showed when I was using LaTeX and Pandoc. So you don't want to build those files manually. And one thing, or one way to do it, is through BibTeX. So there are different ways you can do it. You can export a single one. You can select a few and then also do the same. Or you can export a whole folder, for example, and then it will create a folder for you, a whole file for you, right? And there are some built-in Zotero exports, so some formats that Zotero supports out of the box. But the ones you usually want to use are the ones that start with better, which are the ones that are provided by the Better BibTeX plugin. For the citations plugin that is developed in Obsidian, I think the recommended one is Better CSL-JSON, which is not to be confused with CSL-JSON, which is the stock Zotero one. You want the one that is developed by this plugin, right? Once you select this one, then it gives you a few options. You can, for example, keep it updated. And if I click on that tab, what will happen is that when we do this, and let's maybe use this one, and I can show it here. So let's close this one. And then let's do JSON. So don't worry, you don't have to use the command line, but this is just the easiest way for me to show it to you right now. So this is basically just a JSON file that contains all the things that we have right now in this folder. So when I add let's add something that maybe doesn't belong there, just so that it's easy to spot. Let's add, I don't remember now which folder we were using, probably H2E. Yeah, so now I added Cortex to this one, right? I can verify by pressing Alt. And I don't know if I need to refresh. Maybe let's just close it and open it again. And now I'm gonna try to find Cortex. Oh, sorry, I misspelled. Yeah, so you see it was added by Zotfile here on its own. So you don't have to manually build this extra files that you can use with other tools. So that's one thing. The other nice thing, in my opinion, at least, is that this provides you with a backup, a plain text backup of your library. And this also usually a nice way to share references with someone else if you don't want to share the PDFs because maybe they are there are certain restrictions about what you can share. You can still share the references. And if you have these JSON files or these bib files in your generated by Zotero or by any other reference manager, this is also something that you can do when you come here and import. If someone sent you a bib file, then you can import the whole set of references and store them directly in your reference manager, maybe for you to check out or I don't know, reuse in some way. Okay, good. Then the other nice thing that better BibTeX provides is also maybe answering some of the questions that we have already in the chat. So here in better BibTeX, you have also something called, where was it? Edit preferences per BibTeX, citation keys, and then you have quick copy here. So you can edit the way you cite. Do you remember at the beginning when we pressed edit and I was trying to copy unsuccessfully the citation? It was very unhelpful because it was just copying the number and I would have had to manually add these things. So if you're, for example, working with LaTeX or you're using Pandoc, which was the thing that we were using for Markdown, then better BibTeX provides a way for you to copy this reference or the citation so that you can use it directly there. So I'm going to go and choose Pandoc, which is the thing that works for Markdown. And I'm going to click on this one, which is the actual proper formatting for Pandoc. The other place where you have to edit this is then on how to actually use it, because if I click here, we still see the Zotero default ones, right? So I have to come here, and probably this is why it wasn't working before. Here. So this is the quick copy menu, and this is where you define the style that you want to use when you are using this edit menu and copy. So if you see here, now that we edited the version that we want to use from better BibTeX, it already sort of populated the Pandoc format here, and you can see it. I'm gonna choose this one, and just for the purposes of showing you that it changes, and I'm changing this to side keys only. And then when you see here, then it no longer has the Pandoc formatting, right? So you basically, when you configure better BibTeX, it shows you here in the menu that you're choosing how it's actually going to look like. Right, so I'm just quickly gonna put it back to Pandoc and leave it there, and just make sure that it's there, close, super. Right, so now we can do a super quick demo, and let's say that I want to cite the knowledge graphs paper that I have here. It also shows up here, so I have better BibTeX citation key, and then I would come here and maybe type on my Pandoc demo. 42 graphs, and then just copy paste. And you see it's already formatting the citation as we did before. And now if I were to run Pandoc, for example, then the reference would get added because it's in the BibTeX file as well. Yeah. Cool. Then, sorry, I might be spitting a little bit. The other thing, so as I mentioned before, I use the side keys as part of my naming convention. So You can, so by installing better BibTeX, Zotfile also has some way to recognize this. And you can use one of the wildcards to rename your files according to the site key. So for example, for this one, if we alter super quickly in the renaming rules, we remove basically this one. Oh, press the wrong button. Zotfile, renaming rules. Okay. This is the site key. Oh, sorry, missing the percentage sign. And when I show, okay, it's selected. So if I update, now you see that it is using my site key. So now I just need to add the dash and close, right? But this is still not renamed. So you also have to go ahead and do rename attachments. Then now it basically has prepended the site key. That is what I use, and this is the reason also why Mdnotes has this as a preference by default. Okay, so let's see, questions about better BibTeX or things related to citations. How do you cite in Obsidian from Zotero? In other words, can you briefly show the process? This would be what I just did. So you have to set up Pandoc as your quick site key copy, and then you can basically copy paste. This would be one way. The other way would be to use the citations plugin. So here you have to give the full path to your bib file. So let's do a super quick demo. Where is the vault? Here. So this is what I would do. I would come here and do properties. And you have here basically the file path. And then you come back to Zotero. No, sorry, to Obsidian. And if I paste it here, then vault. And then now I have to add just std2.json. Yeah, there you go. So it already recognizes that I have these 6 references, and then you can just use the command, insert markdown citation, and then you can just choose one, and it will insert the right citation here. Right. So these are the 2 ways that you can cite from within Obsidian in Markdown. Let's see, Markdown export. Yeah, so I just showed this one, how to process, how to combine this with the citation plugin. So that's the whole exporting to JSON, then adding to your path, and then you should be able to use the commands that are there. Let's see, what else? When annotations are, this is later. Here, this one. So how can we link the site key in alpha-year format to a markdown page about the paper? This format does not create an Obsidian link. It is possible, I think. So let's go again to better BibTeX settings, and then where was it? Quick copy here. So you have also these 2 things here. So you have Zotero select link and site key select link. And when I choose this one, wait, did I change it? Preferences in export. Yeah, okay. So now I have the right one. And if I copy and then come here and paste, it's basically pastes a Zotero link. So if you have set up the Zotero URI or URI or URL or whatever is the right name, Zotero link, you should be able to do the following. So I'm gonna do something slightly different. So we are now in a completely different view. We don't have that paper visible. But if I click on this link now, it takes me to the right item. So you basically can jump between Obsidian and Zotero as you wish.
Here, Argentina, I am looking at the time, and I'd say if we could move on and keep the questions for the very end.
Sounds good.
Just so we get through the rest.
Yep, because the rest is Mdnotes, and this is where I have more slides. Yeah, so then the main thing that we do with Mdnotes is to export to Markdown. I'm going to start with this one because I think this trips up a lot of people. So remember we did, particularly for this one, you have to do things that you might set up in Mdnotes. The main one is, or the first one is whether to use the site key as a title or not. The default one is on. This is the one that I use. If you use the title one, you probably will find bugs because I don't test very often with that version. And the other option is to choose how exactly to export the annotations. Do you want multiple files or do you want a single file? So this probably, the decision probably depends on your Zotfile configuration. If you make Zotfile separate your annotations and highlights into multiple files, for example, by grouping colors, and you use multiple files, then you will get one file for your notes, one file that contains the metadata, and then a bunch of files, one for each of the notes that you have here. If you select a single file, then you will get just one file, and then in this order, it will basically go something for your notes, metadata, one, so all the notes one by one. So it really depends on how many files you want. I think people here have multiple opinions. I personally use the one you see here. In the end, what you choose depends maybe on how you use your notes, right? So this I leave basically up to you. I might not do an example on this just because we are a bit constrained on time, and I think it's more interesting to see the hard part that maybe is about configuring the templates. So I'm gonna just move forward, okay? Which is what trips people. So I'm first gonna choose now here the vault. I'm gonna create a folder, Zotero. I'm gonna open, and I'm gonna leave now for now this blank because we want to use the default templates. So again, it depends on what you are exporting, which template gets used. If you right click and do Mdnotes, so this default one basically has three options. Export to Markdown means you are exporting the metadata or the note. So right clicking and having the item, so the parent over here selected means you are exporting the metadata, and this won't ask you anything. You just want this to be done automatically. So if we check the vault, now we should have, come on, should have now what the default template does, right? I'm gonna move the vault a bit closer so it's a bit faster. If I select the note and then do export to Markdown, same thing. So it won't ask, it's just gonna repeat, export it directly. And you see it's using the site key as the first part of the naming convention. And then you get basically also what is exported by default in the templates. Now, if you right click here and try to create your notes files, it won't work. And right now I haven't added yet a warning. So to create your own personal notes, you have to have selected the top level item, right? So you can do here and then create Mdnotes file. And this one, because this one is the one that contains your notes and your manually or sort of manually written things, you don't want overwritten. So this one, every time you save, it will ask you, do you actually want to overwrite this file? Right, so if we do it now here, then you have also, this is for your notes. So let's write something. This is important. Check stuff later, right? So the other thing, so let's do something because, and this is the reason why I set it up this way at least. Let's say I had to manually insert this, or when I downloaded this, for some reason there are some mistakes. I don't know, something. So now I'm fixing the publication name, which is now archive, right? So let's briefly look at here at this one. So right now, the publication name doesn't even show up, I think, probably because it's a paper. So we need to edit the template for it to show up. So I'm gonna edit something else. I'm gonna say that instead of today, it was from 2000, from a year past, right? So this date should change because now I've fixed the mistake. But I don't want my notes to be overwritten. So this file should stay intact. I don't want this to change. So now I'm gonna use a different, so it doesn't matter which one I choose. I could choose export to markdown. Maybe we do that one. So this one won't ask me. It's just exporting the metadata that gets overwritten. So my notes are still safe. And then the date is updated, right? So this is the main thing. So now let's change it now back to this one so that I show the other menu. The other option, maybe what we do is instead delete. Let's delete all of them. Well, apparently I just deleted one. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah, delete. So the other thing might be that you, or this is at least something that I do often. I come, I add the stuff here, I read, highlight, and I want to send to Obsidian for some post-processing and to take notes and to relate it to everything else that I have going on there. Most likely, I just want to create all of them. So when I do this batch export, it won't ask me, and it will create all the files for the both, right? But now you might be worried again, because now this is my file. And say we change this again. Let's put it now next year. And you now export again, because you also highlighted more stuff, things like this. So you want the other files to be updated. When you come back, so this information is updated. Now it's 2022, but your notes are not overwritten. So this is something that is important, at least for the multi-file version. When you use single file, this is basically considered an export, and your notes will be overwritten. So this is why at least I recommend to use multi-file, because you probably will be fixing mistakes or will be changing templates, for example, to use with data view and things like this, and you don't want to have to rewrite your notes file every time or re-export your note file every time, but you probably want to update the metadata or the notes or highlights that you made, right? So at least this is why I recommend multi-file. I know it's a preference thing, but it's just something to consider when you decide how you want to set it up. Right, so the next thing is this template. So now I don't like this thing, or I want to change maybe the information that is here, or for example, in this case, we are missing one of the fields that that are in my paper, right? So this publication is not showing up. In general, you can add any type of placeholders. I only added a few, the most common ones, at least for my use case. But just like with Zotfile, sorry, not here. Oh no, yes, here. Just like with Zotfile, you need to go to the advanced preferences, the config editor, and then you filter by Mdnotes placeholders. And then here you see basically all of the defaults. So this basically lets you customize how your templates look and what information you add and how things are formatted. So I'm gonna quickly go to this part, because I think this is the thing that maybe makes it scary and confusing, right? So you have, we are already here, and this is the way these templates, so the template itself has, I actually have them open somewhere. Here. I have a gist. I'll close this one. I have a gist with the default templates here. So for example, if we look at the Mdnotes template, it has already some placeholders that you want to use and you probably want to customize. And you can add any type. So let's say, for example, that this publication thing that I wanted to add was not there. So you right click on this one, new, and they are of type string. And now you have to basically follow this naming convention that is here. So, oh, sorry, extensions, Mdnotes, placeholders, and then publication title is the name. And now you want to edit something. So now let's just do, for now, oh, sorry. Let's just do quickly content. Because these ones are, yeah, sorry. Then you use contents like this. This is because these preferences that you see here are stored as JSON. So the typing is a bit inconvenient. Yeah, but it's a bit of a limitation from Zotero. So I'm just gonna add it like this right now. I don't go into detail about all the stuff that you can add, but you can add anything that is accessible via the Zotero API. So if you are missing one field from your metadata, just come here, find the field that is missing, and then you just basically add the missing placeholder with this thing called camel case. Just to make it a little bit confusing. So you see here, this thing here looks pretty scary. I have no idea what it even means. So I tried to decompose it a little bit so that it's a bit easier to identify. The first thing is the content, and what you want, this way. What you want is basically this blue line is what is going to be replaced for each of these ones, right? Then you have this field here called field contents. This field contents is just basically, so if you have author and we have an author placeholder, inside those authors you have actually, so here you have multiple of them. This is a list, right? I want to know how should I format each of these individual authors. So I want to format all of them maybe following a certain convention. So I think this example is about tags. So to each of the tags that I have for my item, please add a hash sign before, right? And once you have gone through all of the contents of that field, then just put it in this place, which is basically saying tags, colon, and the list of all tags, one by one, where you added this hashtag, and then just basically separate them by a comma. So right now here, what we did is basically add a placeholder, and we're just adding the contents. We haven't added really the label. So I could add, for example, instead of this, then I can just go and say here, publication, and then column. So I think if we do now, I'm just gonna go ahead and do batch export again. When we come here, we should have had archive added, but I don't know, maybe I missed something. Publication title. Okay, it doesn't matter. If you get stuck with this in particular, so adding new fields, just ping me, it's also all right. Yeah. Sorry, I'm now gonna speed a little bit. So here are the same examples, but for tags. So we can do a little experiment here. If you, yeah, I mean, maybe this is hard to see, but the only thing that I'm changing from the default is this part here. So I want my tags to be formatted just like we have them right now. So like this, but instead of having this, I want to prepend Zotero / so that I basically group my Zotero tags all together. So this is the only thing that is actually different from the default, right? So I'm just gonna copy. And we do OK. And when we export again, open. So you see now all of our tags have the Zotero / before them. So let's try this again. Maybe instead of tags, I actually want all of these to be links and to be maybe used as topics. So you see again, the only thing I'm changing right now on this one is instead of appending the hash sign, I'm just leaving the contents of this field as they are without any formatting. And if you see here, for the tags, we are removing spaces. Removing spaces actually means adding a dash instead of the spaces because Obsidian doesn't have spaces in tags. So for the links, it doesn't matter. I actually want the full word to be there. And I'm still keeping them as a list, but I could also go and make them a list instead of a comma separated one. So I could go, let's go and do like this. Then replace this here. And if I export again, then yeah, so the current tags that we have for this item actually are not very helpful, but you would have basically to edit them a little bit so that they become something that you can reuse as links, for example, right? Yeah, so these ones, for example, are part of the template, which is not super great. So maybe that's something that we want to edit next, right? Custom fields, so that's the other thing, and this one I added recently. It's not yet on the last version, it's on the alpha version, but this is also something that I added so that you could, for example, use data view. So you can add different fields. So in this case, I think you don't see it very well. Yeah, it doesn't matter, it didn't help. I'm using a placeholder with, I think, let me copy the whole thing. Yeah, let's see, let's try. Yeah, let's paste. Yeah, it's not the whole thing. These are things from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So I'm just giving them a weird name. It's just, it doesn't mean anything. And now I'm just adding a custom field. So this is definitely not something that Zotero recognizes, right? But this is something that maybe I want to add to my templates. So I have two different things. So the first thing is the content. This is what will be replaced in the placeholder. And what we want is to be able to get some field from Zotero. So for example, I could have different placeholders that get values from the author field. And this is what I'm saying here, right? So get the contents from the side key Zotero field. Let's add this one. And then let's add another placeholder for Earth. I'm copying this one, new value, string, then Earth. Then we can copy the value here, which is mostly harmless. And now the key is we have to edit our templates, which means maybe templates, and then let's add so right now, at least, the templates that we were talking about here need to be named exactly like this. Later on, maybe I can add some flexibility so that you can have custom names for your templates and maybe even multiple templates. So, but for now, yeah, you have to basically name them like this. All right, so the Mdnotes template is here. I can just come to this place and select my file, my folder where I've stored them. And just for the purposes of the demo, let's just copy from the original. Oh, sorry, I have to place like this. And let's maybe remove. I don't want to have these files here, which is slightly different. And then let's add our new placeholders that we just added, which is the Selami. And let's do Earth. And then let's do something different. A new placeholder, right? So what will happen now, I hope, is that because now I'm using the Mdnotes template. So now this means I want to replace this with a different structure. It will ask me if I want to replace it. I will have to say yes. And when I come here to my template, the contents that we added are here, right? So here, when I didn't add a definition for my field content, like for example, you have here. So I didn't add this part, right? But this is the default. And what this means is that it creates the field automatically. So it gets a label from the placeholder that you defined, which was, in our case, we defined a placeholder for Earth, which is this. And then the content is basically what we have here. So I have a couple of examples from CAT, but also because of time, I'm not going to go through them. But you can go through them in the forum post. And
in Argentina, if it's okay with you, are you thinking about 5 more minutes just to set everyone's expectations?
Yeah, so I'm on my last slide. The next is just going through questions. So we can
Wonderful.
do that pretty quickly. So just basically to summarize without showing it specifically for the data view post, what you did was, just like we did right now with Earth and with Bethselamin, you just add a new placeholder here, which was YAML, and I don't know, for example, collections. And these YAML collections then would get posted here according to your desired format, so that you can basically reuse them in data view, basically. Yeah, so I think I had to speed a bit through that last part. So I hope, yeah, I hope most of you got at least a few nuggets here and there. But now we can go definitely to questions. So if you want, Nick, maybe you can choose the ones that you think are more, yeah, important or useful for in general.
It's a good question. If there are any that really pop out here. If not in Slido, we could always ask someone to unmute themselves one at a time.
Yeah, that would also work.
Or in the Zoom, we have, let's see. Okay, a couple in Slido.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a plan to support the upcoming Zotero built-in PDF viewer?
Yes, there is a plan to do that. It's a bit different. I did have a plan to show the beta here. For now, just keep in mind that the Zotero beta, so the PDF annotator in the Zotero beta has a few limitations. You don't have as many options for highlighting and annotating. And the annotations are not saved in the PDF directly. So you have to export the PDF with the annotations if you want to keep them. But yeah, I do have plans to support it. It's just a matter of when I have a little bit less of work, maybe.
And there's one in the Zoom comments, and maybe this could be the, I don't know, like second to last, depending on how the other ones are. But we have a question. Sorry for the feedback. I'm not sure where that's. But can we see more examples of templates to get a sense of how flexible it is?
Sure. I was partially prepared for this. I imagine this could be one question that was asked. So one thing I did, and I can share this link with everyone else, is to upload my templates here. So for example, I can copy my Mdnotes template, which is quite different from the default one. So I actually do slightly different. I use here a few wildcards. So directly the title, the wildcard is something that you want. It doesn't work like we did with this Earth placeholder. Placeholders, if they are empty, they will be removed and they won't show up in your template. If you use placeholders, placeholders will stay there. So you want to choose you want to use wildcards only when you are certain that this is something that will show up. So for example, the title, everything has a title, everything usually has an author too. So wildcards are pretty safe like this. So this is basically my template. I already added a few links of the types of notes that I use. And here you see I embed also my metadata, my annotations from the separate metadata expert, and add some spots for me to add comments, questions, save my figures, and so forth. I can also add the template for, I think it's Zotero note template. I don't have to add this. So it's a bit different also from the default one, in that I also tag them so that I can filter them as well. And yeah, I add some lines, some tags that I use, and basically link them back to my main file. So if we do now this again, and do batch export, and now I have to also replace my Mdnotes file so that the new formatting is applied, save and replace. Then I click here. So now you have basically my formatting, right? So you see wildcards were replaced with the side key. If I, oh, sorry, I pressed the wrong one. If I go to preview mode, then you see already the embedded annotations from the metadata file. So this, when I go to the metadata file, then you have the annotations listed also maybe a bit differently than in the default template. I don't remember, I'm not sure. Yeah, and I think this is because we changed it. I don't usually link tags like this, and I don't have tags like this. And I'm also missing the collections, but yeah, this is a bit different. So I think customizing the templates is usually the way to go when you need specific things, or maybe a specific formatting for the stuff you want to use the notes for.
So are there any things we're missing? Final things that you'd like? Well, before we get into your final thoughts, Argentina, are we missing any final question? That's really.
I think we covered the last part was a bit super fast, but we covered pretty much everything that you need to get set up. Unfortunately, there was also no time for you guys to follow along. I had planned to also give you the links so you could edit templates and things like this. But if you do want to experiment and get stuck, just ping me in Discord. I'll be happy to help. If you want from the questions in Slido, I found a few. So how to jump from the side key in Obsidian back to Zotero? You sort of can. Not from the side key like we were doing here, because these side keys are not yet supported, right? So the citation plugin can insert them, but you can't really do anything with them just now. So you have to use Pandoc to actually get the PDF with the right formatting and such. You can't really click them because they are not links or anything like this. So in the way I use this, at least, is I actually have the links here. So for me, this is the way where how I go back to Zotero. So I use click and it brings me right to the file. And yeah, maybe a few things that we can do slightly different here. So here, this is one way to attach things. So if I open this one, it will open, I think, in Atom. Yeah. So Atom is my default Markdown file. So I can also double click. Yeah, I don't know why it does this. I can also double click on the files here, but it doesn't help me very much to travel back and forth. One thing you can do is in this thing, search for Obsidian. And you will see the secret Obsidian variables that I've added here. So there are a few things. I've added things for blocks, for block referencing. And I also added this attached to Obsidian URI. So you can also get a link with the Obsidian URI so that the node opens directly on your on your Vault. So if we do again this very quickly, batch export, open, then you saw some other stuff was added here. So I can, for example, click on the green annotations, open link, and it brings me directly to my node. And if you see here, I already added also the possibility to use block references, so that, for example, if you are typing your questions here, so we're now in Hogan, and we want to maybe do some extra annotation of our annotations, and you can basically type stuff here, right? You basically have the power to reuse the annotations that you extracted from Zotero directly in your notes, which is, I think, something that was missing until now. Yeah, I think the other question I can answer maybe is the upcoming workflow. So will the workflow change? Yes, a little bit, because you won't have the annotations directly in the PDF. Most likely what will happen is that you export directly from the item. I still haven't really decided how the formatting will look. There is a discussion open in the Mdnotes repo if you have requests about how to how the export should look like, because the new annotations are stored in Zotero databases, and the Zotero databases then allows us to basically pick and choose and group them maybe differently than it is currently done now. Yeah, so we can change it a little bit. It might make it easier. Might make it just different.
I'm thinking, unless there's anything else that you're dying to get at, Argentina, that we could wrap this up and keep some of the questions on the side.
Yeah.
Before I turn it back over to you, I just want to say, like, how thankful and grateful I think we are as a community to have you, because this is so comprehensive, and to be able to see everything that is possible and how you can work on these technical details and allow that to work for you, I think is quite priceless. So, I just want to, everyone here, give that round of applause, that virtual round of applause, because that's really great that you could do this and just power on too. I mean, it's just so you know, when you're presenting on Zoom and you have a bunch of faces staring at you, or their screens are off, that's a lot of energy that's like being taken from you. And for Argentina to go for 2 hours, I mean, this is really impressive. So I just want to say, I'm really impressed by your graciousness and energy to go this long and give us so much information. So thank you.
Happy to help. I hope this in the end is useful for everyone, gives maybe a little bit of an idea of how to go about setting things up. I know there are some things that look a bit scary, but don't be afraid to ask for help. I think it's not only me, there's quite a few people in the community that are super helpful, and someone already has the answer probably. Yeah, and basically if you get stuck, just let me know, and I will be happy to help you debug or set up things.
Are there any links that we should mention? Obviously, there's the Obsidian forum, there's the Obsidian Discord chat.
I guess the community meta topics. So I really like what we are doing here. It's pretty awesome to get to see and get help from other people that know about different areas of expertise that you have, for example. Yeah, and if you have issues, ideas, suggestions about the Zotero workflow, feel free to add issues or discussions in the GitHub repository. That would be great.
Okay. Anything I'm missing? Anything we're missing?
I think not. I think it was pretty comprehensive, and I think we probably covered all the questions that we have also in Slido, at least from what I can tell.
Okay. Well, there's always more that come up, but as everyone knows, now we can go to the forum, the chat, and keep the conversation going. So again, thank you, Argentina. This is great. I'm going to close it down, everyone. Okay.